We're excited to bring you today's podcast, but have to announce that Paul will not be here as he has made the best decision for his family and joined the ArsenalVision Podcast. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. I mean, look, he's gone over there because he has a deep love for that team, always has, and all their ex-Chelsea players. Know he's a big fan. And he just made the best decision for his family. And who can argue? I'm kidding. But maybe I'm not. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk American hero Folarin Balogun. We're going to talk about Saudi influence a bit and also change. Is Thomas Partey going? How much change in a summer after you challenged for a title is too much change? What is the importance of continuity versus the importance of turnover? But before we do that, I think it is important that I wish everybody celebrating a happy Juneteenth. I think this is one of the more important holidays we have in our country. And for those who aren't familiar with it, is a holiday that celebrates and commemorates the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States, ending, or at least beginning to bring to an end a shameful period in our country's history, and a period that we still grapple with. And I think the impacts of it are still felt around the world. So I think it is definitely a day to be proud to celebrate. I'm sure there are people for whom it is deeply felt, and I know it is for myself. And for those of you who are not aware of it, now you are. So, a holiday here in America that was long overdue and becoming one, and that we are happy to celebrate together. So, happy Juneteenth to everyone there. Now, I do want to let you know that we've been busy bees when it comes to scouting videos. They've been rolling off the production line. So let me just give you a quick list of what you can find over on Patreon for scouting videos. Kai Havertz. Kylian Mbappe, I think, is the more important one that we've done. But, just letting you know it's out there. There is a Folarin Balogun scouting video out there. Declan Rice and Caicedo are out there. We've done those. We've done so many.
Lavia.
Lavia. Oh, yeah, that's right. We did Romeo Lavia. I love that his name is Romeo, by the way. So there's Lavia, there's Havertz, there's some fullbacks, there's just a great compendium of those. We also did the Gabriel Martinelli season review last week. So we're through Saka and Martinelli so far. So we'd love to have you over there if you'd like to be there. Otherwise, just stay here. It's going to be a lot of good stuff, both places all summer, and we're thrilled to have you here. Should have something about LA soon. For those thinking dates, probably something will happen on the 25th of July, but stay tuned as we try to figure that out. Now, here with me is the man who's already introduced himself, sort of. His name is Clive. You can find him on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm all right. Hay fever's killing me. Apart from that,
it's been bad. It's been bad. We there have been a lot of wildfires in Canada, and the prevailing winds are blowing them in different places. And we got them for a while, and just the air quality here has been miserable. So I am definitely with you on that. Joining me also is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stillmanator. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. Thanks for asking.
Decked out in Brazilian regalia today. You got the Brazil shirt.
Yeah, today that's the shirt of choice. Yeah,
the shirt of choice. We did not record the Martinelli podcast as a video, but I will presume that it is always in his honor. Let's start with the I think what's just sort of most top of mind for people, certainly people on this side of the pond, which is American hero Folarin Balogun. The USA did win whatever a Nations League is. Not sure what it is, but we won it. They have it over on your side as well. So, everybody gets a chance to win one. I think Spain just won it over there on penalties over Croatia. What I will say is whether I think it is a big deal or not, the players certainly did, based on the drunken revelry that you saw in the dressing room afterwards. I think Christian Pulisic made a bowling ball of himself and went sliding down the floor to knock things over. And Folarin Balogun was on Instagram Live talking about the Arsenal connection with Matty Turner, who, by the way, was named keeper of the tournament. So all in all, a good day for Arsenal. And if you were not watching, which I can't blame you if you weren't, Folarin Balogun scored a really lovely goal, a nice run, good strength to hold off the defender right through the center forward position, by the way. Gio Reyna, who's now back in the team and playing well, sets him up with a lovely little through ball, and he finishes confidently on his right foot. Just a good 70-ish minutes. He had played in the game before, making his USA debut, and just looks pretty good. So, yeah, I don't know, Tim. I think people are going to look at this, and because he scored for his national team happens to be one that, is represented on this podcast. There's going to be a lot of people saying, we need to keep Folarin Balogun. What are we doing? Keep him, selling Kedia. Or you could see this as the cash register just continuing to ring as the price goes up, money printer goes burr. How do you view Folarin's continued rise, his nice first goal for the USA, and where it leaves Arsenal?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, for him, I know we've discussed this before, but I think it really justifies his decision to go and be, it's almost like a club decision, isn't it? Like being the kind of, do you want to try and grapple to get in the England squad, which is for him at the moment a long way away, or do you want to go to like a team like the US? And, there's a spot for you there in the starting lineup. And, commercially and everything else, look, all these things get discussed. Let's not be naive about players. Like, just look at Declan Rice and Jack Grealish. They were playing for Ireland until it became quite clear how good they would be. And, let's not pretend the discussion was had. Like, if Jack Grealish and Declan Rice were Republic of Ireland internationals, they wouldn't be £100 million players. They just wouldn't, whether they deserve to be or not, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like players like Damien Duff, Robbie Keane, they went for good money, but they didn't go for England international money.
Yeah.
It just does. It puts a bit more money in your pocket, not least commercially, but with clubs as well. And USA, if there's like at the moment, if there's look, in the Premier League, being an England international will always put more of a premium in your head, probably put another 5 figures in your pocket every week. But I reckon US is probably second to that. I don't know, maybe Brazil, there's still, like we said in the Martinelli thing, there's still like a real brand about being a Brazilian footballer. But yeah, like going and being USA's number 9, that's a good career move, particularly for the stage of his career that he's at. And, look, he was actually born in the USA, right?
Yeah.
Someone should write a song of that title.
Yeah. And then it should be misrepresented by politicians who think it means something that it doesn't. That would be brilliant.
Misrepresented by the Republican Party. So in terms of Arsenal, I mean, I think it's good for Arsenal for similar reasons, because I think they're probably going to look at selling him. And I think the reason they're probably going to look at selling him is completely understandably. He's kind of said, I don't want to go on loan anymore. I don't want to go and sit on the bench anywhere anymore. I completely understand that. I think as a player, once you've had a taste of being like the main man, like he was, I don't think you want to go back after that. It's a bit like, I mean, to be fair, this was much longer in the making, but a bit like Emi Martinez. As soon as he got a run of games at Arsenal and played well, he was like, I don't want to go back on the bench. That's just how it happens, So I do think that this is probably coming to an end, and the quite public noises he's making, which I think he's entitled to make, about really wanting first team football, not wanting another loan spell. Completely understand that. I don't think at this stage. I think he's past loan spells now, unless the only way I could see it is if he did kind of want to have a crack with Arsenal and he agreed to a Premier League loan. But then there's a part of me that's thinking, from an Arsenal perspective, it's like shit or get off the pot with this player at the moment. Like, his value's actually quite high.
Yeah,
and one of the things Chelsea used to do well was how they used the loan market. They wouldn't sell a player after a bad loan. I remember like Tammy Abraham went on like a couple of quite indifferent loans, but they held on. And the second he had a good one with Aston Villa, actually they ended up bringing him back because of their transfer ban, but they would have sold, I think, at that point. I think that was their plan. Yeah. They used to do that a lot. They used to wait until the player popped on loan and then they'd sell him. And I think with Balogun now, it's either fully commit to this player or move on. And I think all the noises look like moving on. And look, this helps us. This helps him. I think this helps him negotiate his next wage packet somewhere. I think it helps us negotiate the transfer fee. So, all good. A shame. I think it would be good for us to have USA's number 9 as well. If you're thinking about it purely commercially, I wouldn't complain at all if Arsenal said, actually, Eddie's the one we're going to move on, because I just don't think Eddie fits an Arteta team, to be honest. And we're going to go with Balogun, but I kind of don't think they'll do either of those things.
Yeah, but then I look at like how Pulisic's career is stalled at Chelsea, and I don't know that that's helped grow his or Chelsea's commercial value. And to be fair, a lot of that's injury as well. It is the case that if you want to say Arsenal are bad at selling, the way you get good at selling is you sell players that have transfer value. You can't beat the club with the stick of you're bad at selling when the players were bad at selling are the players no one wants and everyone knows we don't want. The way you get good at selling is you sell some players that other teams really want. But that means you have to be willing to let them go and holding on to every resource you have because you can't really decide if they have a future at your club or not. That doesn't work. I look at Balogun as a great option for a sale, not because I don't trust his talent, but because I think unless he hits his 99th percentile outcome in terms of talent, really explodes, I just see a player that's going to always struggle to have a clear role in the squad. And ultimately in Nketiah, who I would also sell, but we can come on to that, you do have a player who's probably good enough to play for Arsenal and also seems content to be at Arsenal in the role he has, or at least he will take that role. And Balogun has been making noises that he won't be that guy. But Clive, just in terms of the caliber of this player, I mean, do you see a player who, if he stayed, makes an impact on this Arsenal right now with the qualities he has? Would Arsenal be missing out on something that could be an important addition to the team?
Maybe. Let's get some accuracy about what's actually happening here. I think with Balogun, we all, in our minds, we've all got him as this is a good time to sell. I think we'd all agree. Good time to sell, high in the market. Let's do some work. I've not seen any bids or any prices being mooted, apart from one's been mooted by Arsenal fans. A little bit of Italian interest for one of the Milan clubs. Obviously, both Milan clubs have seen a big forward leave. And obviously, Zlatan's left AC Milan and Checo's left Inter Milan. Tammy Abrahams has done his cruciate at Roma. There's some Italian opportunities out there for him. Then we have the fact that his career has been totally interlinked with Eddie. Eddie and him share the same agent. Arsenal seem to prefer Eddie, send this guy out, increase his value, see what he's really like. Personally, I think he's a little bit more suited to Arsenal than Eddie, purely from a technical point of view, purely from how he sees the ball, and a little bit more belief in himself. He's technically really sharp off both feet, really hits laces lovely off both feet. Comfortable, a little bit more comfortable in wide areas, but I'm not sure of his absolute impact versus the best Premier League centre-backs. Hence why I think a Premier League loan could be risky. He could actually take the price the other way around, and Tim's nodding, so he agrees. I think it could be risky. So it feels like the right time, unless he's comfortable, to come into a group of 2 to 3 strikers. Now, he said he doesn't want to go on loan again, but if Eddie was to go, and there is a little small rumour of Brentford, and given what's happening there, you can see that happening. You can see why that could happen. And on Balogun, Crystal Palace had a little sniff around him there. So there's a couple of Premier League options developing for those two. I think what I've discovered, Elliot, since the last time we spoke, is the pace of football is moving so fast, and some of the things you're going to come on to. Rumours of teams being prepared to let people go, in our minds, turn us into panic because we feel exposed. I'm sure you get onto that. And so I think the pace of football is quicker than any other summer. And it's really the rules of renewal around squad building, I think, are going again. If you think what we did last summer with the changes that we made that were quite significant, and look at the points we turned around on Spurs and Liverpool. They got it wrong. You can do this in one window if you get it right. I think the old rules of we can only bring in 2 players because it's going to upset the balance, rubbish. Managers have got a better painting now about how they want to play, and it's easier to plug and play people into those systems if you do your research up front, which we all know now compared to half a decade ago. The data around research on players and what they actually do, you can plug them into your team. So even since we spoke to you last week, we have seen a fundamental shift on our forwards, on our midfielders, not so much defence, based on what Arsenal are supposedly prepared to do and prepared to commit to. So an interesting one. From my own eye, Balogun fits my eye better than Eddie. We'll like to see him give him a chance. Well, if the market tells us there's a chance because someone's going to buy Eddie, I wouldn't be upset if he was in our group. But the market told us they're going to give us 2 chances, I will do that too, because there are other players out there that can give us a level of quality.
Can I just add really quickly
Yep.
as well on Balogun? You know, you're talking about like a potential Premier League sale, which is hypothetical because we don't know about that. But when you mentioned Palace, Clive, what nationality are their owners? What nationality are a lot of the owners in the league?
Yeah.
A lot of owners in
American.
the league would probably like USA's number 9.
Yeah, good shout, Tim.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tim. And like, yeah, I mean, maybe Todd Bowley could put in a cheeky £100 million bid, and everybody can shake hands, and they can send Havertz the other way, and we can see some of our fans melt down. It'll be brilliant. I would say that on the Balogun front, just as a final point to this from my perspective, I just see this as a situation where if he stayed, didn't go out on loan, didn't get sold, when the chips are down, Mikel's going to pick Trossard to play. Or he's going to pick, if Kai Havertz comes in, Kai Havertz to play. He's going to pick Jesus. That, like, we've seen this with Mikel and most coaches, to be fair, when the chips are down, that guy who's got talent, who wants to break into the squad, like, he's going to have to wait his turn. And this is a player that's not ready to wait his turn. And by the way, you have to respect that, right? I can respect Eddie Nketiah wanting to find a role at this club and wanting to stay at this club and fight for a role in it. I can also respect a player saying, hey, I know you brought me up, but I want to go be the man somewhere. I respect that also. And so I just think it makes sense in this instance for Arsenal to show that they're willing to recoup money. Because you know what? If you get 30 million for him, you're on your way to raising 100 million in sales. And I don't have to list out all the players, but believe me, the money is there between Xhaka and some smaller sales we have to make and maybe a surprise sale here or there. You're on your way to making 120 million in sales. And suddenly that means you can bring in that one extra big, ready to play kind of player that might tip you over the edge. And so instead of thinking about it as, well, what could Balogun be if he becomes his absolute best outcome? Think what Arsenal could be if we really strengthen properly this summer. And that's what I think this allows us to do. Now, that brings us to what I think is the biggest Arsenal news, though. And it's the rumor that Thomas Partey may go this summer. And I think there are a lot of people that'd be happy to see the back of Thomas Partey. And, that is a conversation that's certainly out there. I think what we're going to do, for obvious reasons, is discuss the impact of this football-wise on this team, on the pitch, and whether we can sell him this summer and we can be even better next season. Tim, in Xhaka and Partey, you have two of the most senior players in the first team. Do we have any other players of that seniority that are really first teamers? No, Jorginho came in. I think that's it. I think those are your two senior leaders in terms of, if you consider age leadership, which is not always the case, of course. You have 5,500 Premier League minutes. I find myself on the fence about how much change you can make in a summer after you've just competed for a title and not run the risk of slow start, new integration, figuring it all out. You could convince me that the primary goal of this summer, the number one thing we want to do, is prioritize continuity. Layer in some extra talent, sure, but we were close this season. You may say, not in the end. Well, we were pretty close. And for a while, we were on a 100-point pace with these players. Continuity, for me, would have been priority one. And then just let Odegaard and Saka and Martinelli and Saliba, let these younger players continue to get even better around the structure that we have, and just let organic growth take you up another level. Sure, layer more talent on, but take that way. When you take Xhaka out, even though I've been ready to move on from him for a while, you're taking out quite a lot of experience, right? And you're taking out a known quantity. Thomas Partey for 3/4 of this season was the best midfielder in the league. And then after the interlull, a little bit of injury, a little bit of mixed form, and I don't think he was at that level. How do you evaluate what our priorities should be here in terms of bringing in new talent, younger talent, refreshing, versus continuity? The impact of this move in particular could have from a continuity standpoint.
Yeah, I look, we'd be stupid not to acknowledge that there is some risk in moving on two guys who start for your team every time they're fit, basically. Mm-hmm. I mean, Partey, that didn't become the case at the end of the season. And again, individually, you could definitely make a case for both of them. not least just on age if you wanted to. And you could say, well, look, a lot of the stuff we're losing in Xhaka in terms of leadership, if you bring Declan Rice in, a lot of it depends on how they're replaced. If, for example, it was like Rice and Caicedo, I think, which it's not going to be, but I think then most people will be like, okay, fine, because those are two stellar players. And ultimately, Arsenal did change, 3 players in their starting lineup last summer, and it made them much better. However, I think that's it was one from each compartment, really, if you consider Zinchenko, as I do, like a midfielder. Mm-hmm. You had Saliba in defence, Zinchenko midfield, Jesus up front, and that was like a little bit of turnover in each position, which I think made us a lot better. Obviously, here you'd be looking at the same department of the field, and of course that would be difficult. I think you could also just make the argument you've got to rip the Band-Aid off a little bit, but it depends who comes in. Like if for example Havertz was to play in Xhaka's position, then I know he's 24, but he's very experienced, and you've got Rice and Havertz. I think those players could plug in and play pretty much. They're both experienced Premier League players as well, so there's a lot. Whereas if it was, for example, Lavia from Southampton, then I'd be much, much more cautious about moving both of those players on, because that, to me, that would be a kind of almost like a Lokonga replacement, someone you want to develop underneath the team. So it really depends on who's coming in. And of course, there's the depth question as well, because if you get rid of those two, and even if it's for Rice and Havertz, your squad hasn't got any bigger in doing that, and unless you consider, well, we bought Jorginho in January, El Nene's going to be back. How you kind of consider all of that. I do think the fact we've got 3 prominent central midfielders who are 30 and over, that it does need addressing. And again, it kind of depends on how you consider Jorginho. Then you could consider that Jorginho is already a replacement for, say, Partey, for example. So I think there are caveats to it. I think broadly I am with you that losing both of those players, it's definitely risky at the very least, and I think we'd have to acknowledge that risk. I don't think the whole world would fall apart.
No,
but you're right. Maybe it has an impact on the first 3 games, and maybe you draw 2 games and you're out of it. Like that's just kind of how the league is nowadays.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we brought a lot of new starters in 2 summers ago and got a lot better. We brought 3 new starters in last summer. Saliba is a new starter technically, Zinchenko and Jesus, and got a lot better. And maybe new starters this summer is what it takes, puts us even over the edge. The issue is just like layering strength on strength. I think if you, first of all, I don't see how you can let Jorginho go also, but let's just say you did. And you go from Partey, Jorginho as your options in central midfield to Rice, El Neni. Have you made the group stronger? Have you made yourself, have you stress tested that? Or are you going to hold up over Champions League in the league? Now, it is worth pointing out, Thomas Partey has started 18, 23, and 28 games in his 3 seasons at Arsenal. So durability has been an issue. And I certainly think going to like a Rice, who historically has been available, is an upgrade purely from a predictability of your lineup standpoint, assuming all things hold. I think we're always going to have a little bit of recency bias, Clive. So people will look at how Thomas Partey finished the season and think we can do better than this guy. I think if you think about who this guy was on the pitch prior to that interlull, I don't know that anyone was playing better in the Premier League. So it is a hard thing to replace, even if you think you can replace it. If you say to me our midfield is Rice and Partey, wow, that's a lot of depth and talent. If you say it's Rice and El Neni, it's a different situation. He is turning 30, so I see Tim's point. Where are you on this, Clive? Because purely from a talent standpoint, I do think your goal is to grow your talent base this summer. Xhaka and Partey going is a lot to refill. I think we have to refill and then some, really,
Yeah, I'm flipping my head a little bit on this. If you look at the rumours, right, we're interested in Lavia. We're still interested in Caicedo. Our primary targets seem to be Rice and Havertz. They're like we are doing those 2.
Until City gets on us for Rice, but let's not get too depressed on a Monday morning.
If that happens, it happens, right? So I think City will go for Kovacic because I think the balance suits him. I think Gundogan will go to Barcelona, in my opinion. If he goes to Arsenal, I'm questioning why he'll come to Arsenal. Is he coming to Arsenal for contract length and money versus staying with the best team in the world in the same league? If he went to Barcelona, a new experience, I could deal with that. That makes sense. So at 31, 32. And so basically, my view is those Havertz and Rice are the two we're going for. Now, I was here the other day thinking Xhaka's going and Havertz will play up a versatile forward and Rice will stand in in Xhaka's slot and we'll develop that way. Now, a few days later, Partey could go. And so what I'm realising is we are open. The market is open. And given what's happened in Saudi Arabia, for example, everything's changed. Everything's changed. If an opportunity drops on your lap, you're going to take it. But what you need to have is an alternative. Hence why Caicedo's still in the room. Hence why Lavia's in the room. I think we have to view them as that. They're in the room as possible options depending on who goes. Rather than try to do what maybe we were doing last week, which was carving out our first 11s, and how we're going to play, where they're going to stand, what position they're going to play. Because we love doing that. I love doing it more than anybody, right? So, but I'm not going to do it anymore because I think the world has changed. The world has changed. Ruben Neves' transfer has changed everything. A 26-year-old going to Saudi Arabia, it's changed everything. It means everything's open. Everything's open. And if there's opportunity here for some players to go and do it another way, we have to be prepared to make sure that the targets that we have can create that floor which is higher than last season. That's what we're trying to do. Create a floor which is higher than last season for multiple competitions. And so, yeah, that's where I am. So I think some of the party stuff, it's a little bit unknown and it's very difficult to discuss that individual in particular. I think some of the conversations around him were overblown regarding him losing form at certain times. If you go into the Man City game, Xhaka was sick, Partey was potentially injured, and we had Rob Holding playing, and we didn't feel we could trust other players to play in those positions. And we went into that game with half the power. And it's so disappointing because I'd love to play them with all the power. And so we just have to call it as it is. He was absolutely fine until he wasn't. But then you have to do what I would always say is the right thing to do. You have to project forward and say, over 3 seasons, the injury record has been indifferent. Is this the right time to do something if the opportunity presented itself? It might be the right time for the player as well, by the way, to go to a different league, less stress on his body. If that happens, it's just part of football. But you make sure you have an alternative. And I think that's why the rumours are supporting that discussion, Elliot.
And I think my biggest concern would just be those first couple months of a season where you're starting a new season with a totally new lineup and you don't have the option to put in the guys who, have been most integrated. Mikel's system takes time to understand. Now, out of the one side of my mouth, I could say that. Out of the other side of my mouth, didn't take much time for Saliba or Zinchenko or Gabriel Jesus. Now, 2 of those guys came from a similar system. Declan Rice will not be coming from a similar system. That much is clear. The other thing is when we get our business done, right? We saw 2 seasons ago, we went into the first 3 games of our season woefully underprepared, and we all know what happened. I'm not saying that's going to happen this summer, but if you are going to move out of Xhaka and a Partey, you can't be getting Rice in August 25th. You know what I mean? That's just not an option. But, again, I brought up being good at selling. If like the Saudi league wants to give you 55 million euros or something for Thomas Partey, or 60, maybe you just have to do that now. Instead of playing him into his age 30 season with some fitness and durability concerns, you can't be afraid of change. Clive?
Exactly what I'm saying. I'm a huge fan of Thomas Partey, but mate, I'm not dumb. If someone's going to throw you that money, you got to take it. Right? You got to take it because you can do things with that. And suddenly, Caicedo comes back into the room, doesn't he? Right? And he has got potential. So we just have to be open and ready for market opportunity. And that market has suddenly grown. And I think that's the key thing to say. That's suddenly grown. And so the work you've done with certain targets, you need to say, sit down, lads. Don't do anything yet. Don't go popping off to Chelsea. Don't go popping off here. We seem to have relationships with Lavia's agent. We've done the groundwork with Caicedo. He's already made his love clear. However, money's money. And we've seen done our work with Rice, and we've seen done our work with Havertz. For me, let's see what the market presents. It may even take into the middle of the next month, particularly with Partey, and then we'll know for sure if we can move. If nothing presents itself and the manager comes back from his holidays, by the way, and says, he ain't going nowhere, then we're all clear about where we are regarding what we're going to do next season.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because, Tim, when I look at Granit Xhaka, I see a guy who had a phenomenal season doing what was needed and what was asked of him at a position that I don't think is the most natural for him. And he made it look natural, and that is a testament to his quality and his work rate. I can see a path to how a Kai Havertz, for example, comes in and can operate in some of those spaces at the top of the box and give Martinelli even more and Jesus even more and make the late runs and add some goal-scoring oomph. There is a question of what it means going the other way. I'm always thinking about how we score more goals, and I realize there is the question of how you stop the other team from scoring more goals. But I can see a path to a player who's more comfortable in those zones giving us something. In central midfield, it's a hard position to solve, right? From, I guess, even going back to Vieira, I think maybe Santi Cazorla. I'm not sure. We haven't solved that position many times very well over the last 20 years, really. And in this guy, he hasn't been available enough, and he hasn't been consistent enough in his form. But when he's been good, he's been as good as you can be at that position. And so we're going to bring in a new player, and that new player has to be that good if we want to go do what we did again. But then you need one more, I think, depending on what you think Jorginho has to offer, or maybe you think El Neni still has something to give us. I think we're past that point. So this is all just about risk. Transfers are risky. We have hit an unbelievable hot streak of transfers coming in and working. Ramsdale, White, Zinchenko, Jesus, right? They all came in and I think performed at or near the top of expectation, injuries notwithstanding. Our young, Martinelli was a signing. Who could have predicted that? Trossard came in and worked. You can look, Gabriel Magalhaes, came in and worked brilliantly. All of these players have really performed kind of near the top of the range of outcomes you get from a transfer. Just look at Chelsea, for example, to see how the opposite can happen. We're not going to roll doubles on every transfer. We're just not. There's going to be another Pepe event, hopefully not a Pepe level disappointment. No offense to Pepe, but maybe some offense to Pepe. So you give yourself a lot more cushion on your transfers if you keep the guys that can perform for you. And we'd be moving two of them out and two of our most senior ones out. So to finish on this point, what's your ultimate feeling Arsenal should do if, let's say, there's a big offer from Saudi Arabia, for example, and the player's willing to go there and we can move him on? And I think there are a lot of people that would be eager to see us do that. And I get it. From a football standpoint, where do you think it leaves us? Because we did just challenge for a title earlier than anyone expected. We would be making a lot of change at the most fundamentally experienced core of our squad in the summer right after we challenged. You think we can get even better? What do you think the risk reward profile is on this ultimately?
Yeah, obviously it's a risk, but then not doing anything is also a risk, or rather keep it like there's risk on all sides basically. I think I'd say that the information that kind of came out about Partey is that there has to be, I think the words were, an important offer. So this doesn't strike me as Arsenal are going to give him away, or in a Cedric style situation where they're just like, someone take him. It kind of sounds like, look, if someone gives us a big offer, we'll think about it. And there's probably a reason that information's got out, because
Fabrizio used the word concrete, but concrete seems to be I think he's getting paid per use of concrete this summer. So bear that in mind. Yeah, please. Sorry.
But yeah, that to me kind of sounds like we're ready to listen to offers, but offers, not, we're not going to be giving them away on the cheap or anything like that, but just putting it out into the ether, maybe to Italy or Spain, that, look, if someone comes up with £20 million, we'll talk. That's where I think it's come from, and I think that's about right. I don't think it's about giving the player away. It's about someone put some money in our pocket here. He's 30 years old. He's had very questionable fitness record. He's got 2 years left on his contract. Yeah, let's talk. It's we're not going to extend his contract, are we? That is not going to happen whatsoever. So I think it's kind of fair enough to just put it out there. I think he'll stay because I don't necessarily think anyone will come up with that money, unless it's Saudi Arabia. But then, like, the player kind of has to be willing to go there as well. So, I'm still not sure. I think that will happen. So I think it's perfect. I think it's all perfectly reasonable. I think it's like we're not desperate to get rid of this player at any cost. We're just it's got 2 years left. We're just putting it out there that if someone comes in and that helps us to buy like the next guy, whether that's Caicedo, I kind of think that looks like Chelsea are going to do that. So
yeah,
but or someone else, or whoever the Caicedo is in January or next summer or whatever. And maybe they think, look, we've got Jorginho for now, who's, pretty much very similar profile to Partey, similar age, etc., etc. Maybe they think that's all right. We can afford to move him out if we get money for him. I think that's a perfectly fair enough position to take. And I think there are a few players in our squad in that position. We were talking about the strikers earlier in Ketia. Exactly the same. I don't think anyone's in a massive rush to get rid of him or anything like that. But if someone waves some money under our nose, you have to consider it. I think, and in terms of that position with Havertz, I think with Havertz that will be another Trossard style thing where he can play in 3 or 4 different roles. And I guess just in closing, I'd take issue with the idea that Xhaka wasn't suited to that role. I think Xhaka was suited to that role.
Interesting.
And actually what we'd done is we'd put him in an unsuitable role for 5 years before that made us think that was his role. And actually I think what happened is the manager found his real role.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. When I say not suited, I think what I would say is even the staunchest Xhaka defenders, I would think, and I've defended him quite a bit this season, but I think would say when you're in those little triangles, that small-sided game around the box, some days he was really good at that, but I still think that the 1-2s, the darting runs, the first-time finishes, apart from the final day against Wolves, obviously, I think that you can go up a level there. But then again, there are other things he did from that position that are certainly valuable. What I will say, Clive, you and I had a look. I was just going to say Romeo Lavia is a talent. You can't miss it. It pops off the screen. I was surprised at how raw he looked to me. For my eye, that is not a player who's ready to play 1,500, 2,000 minutes at a team that wants to challenge for a title. That's not to say he's not ready to play somewhere a lot. What's hard is if you're going to spend $50 million on a player, he's too young to only play 500 minutes for us. I don't think he's ready to play 2,000 minutes for us. And do you spend $50 million, loan him out? It doesn't make your team any better. It's an awkward fit for where we are, because I think the best thing for Lavia is to be somewhere where he's the man again this season and play 2,500, 3,000 minutes. I think that's what a 19-year-old should do. He can't do that for us, as far as I see. So it's a weird fit,
No, so he played 2,200 minutes this season, approximately, and for a team that went down. So very challenging environment for him. I think he could do 1,500 minutes playing for Arsenal quite easily.
At our level, what we need to be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't underrate his talent, honestly. He's been in the Marines for a year. So he's come out really strong, and I think he has a lot of things that we could use. Now, do I want him first pick every single week like Thomas Partey was? No, I don't. I don't think he's ready for that. But he's definitely ready to be in the rotation, and so I think that's a possible there for me. Caicedo at his age, I believe, was playing in Belgium, right? So wasn't playing in the Premier League. So what could he be in 2 years' time? So just got to project forward.
Well, in 2 years' time, I think he could be the guy. Don't get me wrong.
So
it's just,
so being part of the rotation with some of our older people that we have, I think I can see a lot of sense in that move. I know we did a scout on him last week, and I can see a lot of sense. And he ended the season really strong. He's starting to explode, and you've got to try to pick these guys before they explode. Because when they do, it's 3 games will match your day, mate, and it's over. 40 million quid on top of you. That's the end of it. Caicedo, the first bid was like 45, 50 million last January. It could be 100 million now, depending on what paper you read, right? So we just can't afford to hang about and wait. I think We could do a whole podcast on what our midfield looks like. I think the right-hand side is sorted. The 6, I think we know what style we're used to. Whether you want a playmaking 6 or a Rodri Rice 6, that's your choice. But the left 8, we could put one of 20 players in there in our squad. You know what I mean? Literally. Some people like Smith Rowe, we got Vieira, Xhaka debate you and Tim just had. Havertz, the way he receives the ball back to goal, the way we played it last year, he could do it. Off the ball, can he do it? Trossard has done it on occasions. Some people say we should move Odegaard over there and get other people onto the right-hand side. Why would you want to move a 15-goal guy from his good position where he was last year, where he scored 15 goals in open play? There is so many debates. Do you want to go to striker system? Do you want to play a 4-diamond true, a true 4-diamond true, and have Havertz at the tip of the diamond? There is so many things you could do. So many things you can do. But you can only do that when you have the people on board and they are good players. But I do think the left 8 is something that I think is going to be defined by the individual, not by the system. And if Rice was to play there, he would play it like Steven Gerrard. Xhaka played there his way. You know, if Havertz was to play there, he'd almost play there like a left-footed Robin van Persie in that spot. Get it, turn around, combine 1-2s. But if you look at Xhaka last year, how many times did he find himself at the centre-forward position? You know, as a late arrival, in the box, centre-forward, our tallest player in our front 5, centre-forward. You can see Havertz doing that role, can't you? But when he gets in the box, it's not Xhaka in the box, it's Havertz in the box to score 30% of his goals, headed goals. So there's so much optionality there. And there could be me and Paul were discussing it last week, so I'm going back on my own words. I thought he might be a false 9, which obviously he could do. But if he was to be an 8, and the way that Jesus drops and the way other players drop and roll in, and that player rolls in behind, you could see Havertz doing that, couldn't you? You know, I just think it's very difficult to project. You just have to I know it sounds boring, right? We have to wait. You have to wait for the rumours to settle down, let alone the players coming to the club. You just have to wait and see what our direction is.
It's not fantasy football, but like, there is a world where the way you go win the title is not to sell Xhaka and Partey and buy Rice and Havertz. It's to not let Xhaka or Partey go and buy Rice and Havertz. And now you're starting your 11 from last season and your bench has Rice and Havertz on it. Or you're starting Rice, but Partey can come in off the bench, or Partey can play right back if you really want to control space, right? Or you can put Partey and Rice next to each other if you really want to protect the back 4 and play Havertz as a left 8 and Shaka's on the bench if you need that extra solidity late. And now you have those options. My printer has just decided to start printing things. I have no idea what it's printing or who's printing it. So we have a ghost in the machine. I think, look, I think we're going to get some Havertz news this week. England play North Macedonia later today, and then I think the Rice news will really heat up and we'll probably see something happen there. I still think we're going to get Rice done. I still think he'll come to us. The City interest, maybe it's real, maybe it's not. Maybe it's something to help West Ham get a little more money out of us. We have to talk about the impact of Saudi Arabia and the Saudi League on what's happening in the Premier League, and teams like Chelsea getting some FFP relief. Very, very lucky. Just good luck. Nothing else there. Nothing to see here. No improper relationship. Just good luck. That's all it is. We're going to dive into that relationship. We're going to dive into what it means, how we can take advantage of it, and really the impact on transfer fees and on the future of football. So really small talking points ahead. But again, last week I let the listeners down quite a bit with some very, very short ad reads. I know a lot of you got in touch and said, what the heck is this? Just one ad read or whatever the case may be. Look, I apologize. So we're going to try to remedy that. And the first way I can remedy that is by remedying your, let's just say it, your overgrown situation in your nether regions. And it's time to do something about it. And the way you do that is with Manscaped. Now, I will tell you, I have this copy in front of me, and I have parts in red that I'm supposed to read. They are calling it Smooth Sack Summer. I'm sorry. It's in red. It means I have to read it. I would not call it that. And I want to be clear. I don't think this needs to be a gendered product. This is the best purpose-built trimmer for your nether regions, period. Whatever you have in your nether regions. Okay? It's designed to work on loose skin, so it's great for that. It's got the wet dry functionality. Everybody shaves, everybody poops, everybody shaves. And if you shave, you're probably using a tool that's not as good as this one. Why would you do that? It's got a light so you can see what you're doing. It's got ceramic blades with skin safe technology, long battery life, just a charging cradle. You put it in. It's got the, the touch charging, whatever you call that, wireless charging, whatever. They also give you these wonderful, if you get the performance package 4.0, you get the boxer briefs, you get the shed travel bag, you get the deodorants and toners and all of that good stuff. They have the Shears 2.0, which is a luxury nail grooming kit. I wish I knew about the importance of grooming your nails when I was younger. I had the broken cuticles and the nail issues. So no, you don't want to do that. Use the Shears 2.0, great nail kit. This is just a great collection of purpose-built products to give you the confidence of feeling smooth and well shorn in all the right places would be. Plus, they actually do the job really well. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. 20% off and free shipping. That's a lot of savings with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. And again, it's in red. I got to read it. It's smooth sack summer. Get on board or get left behind. What would it mean if you got left behind? I don't know, but that's what they said, and that's what I've said. Now, I do want to let you know that we are proud to have Oakley as a sponsor here, an iconic eyewear brand. I wear the HSTNs. I love them. The thing about Oakley that I like, I got to be honest, most sunglass companies just seem like they copy each other's designs. Oakley has some of the traditional designs that you're familiar with, but they have such a good selection of unique designs. Like, it's so weird. We all have a personal style and we all want to exude that personal style. And then when it comes to eyewear, we're like, oh, can I have something every single human on the planet is wearing? Oakley's look good. They're made well. They have a unique style. You're going to find one that I think really suits your personality. They have prism lens technology. The minute you put on a pair of Oakleys, I feel like the first thing you notice is how good the optics are. And really, it is eyewear. It's about the optics. Look up Prism Technology on Oakley.com. And while you're there, you can get some sunglasses. Kylian Mbappe wears them. So if you want to be as good at football as him, I'm not sure if sunglasses will help, but it's entirely possible and you should try it out. Probably not possible, but you should try it out. So Oakley, quality, style, Prism technology, great sunglasses. It is summertime. You're going to need them. Go to Oakley.com and check it out now. Go to Oakley.com. And last but not least, always proud to say this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, because BetterHelp is not online therapy. It's therapy. It just happens to be online. It's therapy that can help you through crisis, but it shouldn't just be about crisis. It should be about every day working on who you are as a person so you can be a more effective, healthy, happy person. You work on your body through your nutrition or your exercise. You work on your body by going to a doctor. Your mind is the most important part of your body. Maybe you work on your mind through education or reading or whatever the case may be. Listening to a great podcast like this one, certainly the best thing you can do for your mind. But right up there would be mental health. And your mental health is about working with a professional, not just talking to friends and family and partners. Of course, it's important, but a professional can help you work through the challenges that hold you back. BetterHelp is flexible. You can have the camera off if you don't feel comfortable seeing the therapist directly. You can get comfortable. You don't have to get in the car and drive and find a place to go. You can find a specialist in your area. It is the way to do it. I hope you will give it a try. Get started now. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/vision today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. Clive, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Okay. Clive, the Saudis, they have a league and they are ready to flex their financial muscle. Let's do this. Let's set the morality part of it to one side. We have actually talked at length about that, and it is a really important conversation. I am not yada-yadaing it. I'm not saying I don't want to have it. But for right now, given that we're in the transfer window and we're seeing a disruption of football, I want to just talk about the football component of this first. What do you see as the disruption to football happening here? I mean, a great example, and we can maybe talk about how you feel about this. The Saudi Public Investment Fund has invested in Clear Lake. Clear Lake is an owner of Chelsea. Chelsea are getting a lot of their players they need to move out bought at very nice, big transfer fees, purportedly by Saudi clubs, routed to the different Saudi clubs by the PIF that now owns all these Saudi clubs, basically collectively. It's helping out their FFP issues. It all looks very cozy. It is a very big disruption. Do you see this being more like the Anzi or Anji, whatever it was called, or the Chinese league, where it was a flash in the pan, or are we into something different here?
Well, I don't see it as a flash in the pan. As per China, when the Chinese government changed direction, they change direction, and when they speak, things happen, right? So So you've outlined what's happening with Clear Lake, and what's even worse than that is, for example, Newcastle were looking at Kieran Tierney. We read for probably months now. All of a sudden, Newcastle looking at Cucurella for a cut price, 30 million. That feels a little bit cozy, doesn't it? If that was to happen, Arsenal are just kept to one side. Arsenal have an asset that potentially may not be overly happy down south, that they have on their books, and they can't move to go and get other players, and some of the other players, maybe some of the players that Chelsea are looking for. I mean, this is the stuff that makes people feel the game is not as clean as we'd like to believe in our own naive minds, where there is lots of money and lots of billionaires who are not stupid. We have Chelsea who have overstocked themselves. They overstock themselves. Now they have an exit route wherever for their older players, and the younger players are sitting there on long contracts. They seem to never be disadvantaged despite operating in a way which I don't find comfortable. Let's not talk about the previous 1.5 billion of dirty money coming into their clubs. They can be the most successful team in the last 2 decades, right? And we just sit there and we let this happen. If there's no accountability for these things, there's no real investigation into these relationships. There's no investigations up front. Even the fact when when Saudi took over Newcastle, the government interjected itself due to the other relationships it has with Saudi Arabia. When you read these things, you think, hold on, we're playing a different game. We're sitting here trying to work out what Kai Havertz is trying to play. And they're playing a completely different game that involves government contracts, billions of pounds, people coming into our game that's going to distort the game in an unorganic way for years and years and years to come. And the sad thing is, we will now judge our club, our executive and our manager and his decisions that he makes in an environment which is false, an environment where some teams can't make mistakes. We sat on this podcast a few years ago, and Tim was really worried about Thomas Partey coming in. He wasn't sure about the player, but what he was sure about was the cost of that player. The fact he was 27, and he knew we couldn't make a mistake. We couldn't make a mistake in our rebuild. He didn't know about the player. He admitted it. The reason why he's thinking that way is that we can't afford to make mistakes, whereas some of the clubs we're competing with can make mistakes as much as they like because the money's involved do not concern them. And that is really, I don't think it's right. And you're worried, Elliot. You're worried about losing a couple of experienced midfielders because you know we can't afford that mistake. We can't afford that mistake because our expectations have been raised. It just feels that we are judging our team in a way which is fine for us, but it's unfair. It's really unfair what's happening within the game potentially. It's all to be proven. We know the rest. I'm waiting for the Athletic long read to come in. The fact it hasn't come in yet means they're probably clearing that in the law courts. Right? And so I'm just waiting for it to come in. And when that does, we'll all have a clearer picture, right? And where this is. But what really needs to happen is not the Athletic to highlight it, but our football governance in this country to really get hold of what's actually happening, particularly around this Saudi regime and the ownership at Newcastle and what's happening at Chelsea. I think they really need to get hold of this.
Yeah, it's so much to parse. There's ethical components to it. There's the impact on football long term, the destabilizing impact potentially on the structures of football at their very core. There's the Chelsea relationship. By the way, I should, in the interest of fairness, point out that some people I know who are very knowledgeable in finance, very knowledgeable about hedge funds, have sort of rubbished the significance of the PIF's investment into Clear Lake in terms of it leading them to have some kind of say in what Clear Lake does or vice versa. All I would say to that is, while it may not mean that there's direct influence in terms of the size of the investment, what I would say is it creates a cozy relationship. It creates friendships. It's a
relationship. You can't dismiss what goes on in a relationship.
Right.
You just can't. When there's a clear lineage of relationship, I don't think any of us can dismiss it. We can debate the significance, but I don't think we can dismiss it.
Yeah, no, I think you're completely right. Where I was going with that is essentially that I don't know that it necessarily means that they're able to bring a financial influence to bear in terms of the size of the investment, but the mere existence of that relationship, means that there's connections there and ability to do favors for one another or ask favors of one another. Tim, let's talk the Chelsea side of this just for a second. It looks like they're going to be able to move a lot of players. They were in significant FFP trouble. If what I read is true, June 30 is a big deadline for them to move players. And by the way, I think that's why there are some people that are like, don't buy Kai Havertz. You're only helping them with FFP. Well, I think when it comes to a transfer window, priority one your decision-making should always be driven first and foremost by whether you can make a move that makes you better. That's what's in your control. When you start going to second order and third order effects, you're playing 4D chess. That's how you get transfer moves wrong. Oh, we'll buy this less good player because then we're not giving money to this. Right? You know what? Bowley and Chelsea are going to find the money. What you have to hope is they use it poorly. Right? It's like Manchester United. They're going to find the money, hope you use it poorly. If you'd given Arsenal money under Raul Sanyehi, we would have used it poorly. Wouldn't have mattered how much he gave us. Right? We bought Nicola Pepe for £73 million. We gave £250,000 a week to Willian. So don't worry about that. But I do see that what, the Saudi League is doing for Chelsea gets them out of a bind of their own making and lets them reset after making a lot of mistakes. Is that just from a Premier League standpoint, like in the short term, is that principally the issue? Would you say, hey, you know what? If this is a party and other people are going, we should go, let's get our players sold there for big fees. How do you feel about the way Chelsea are getting bailed out and how Arsenal should respond to this, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking just a minute ago about selling Thomas Partey to Saudi Arabia. So, that's just it, isn't it? The duality of the football fan right there. I mean, the thing is here, this does feel a bit like, to me, another reckoning for football. The first one, I mean, I say the first one, that's probably a bit too clean because these things are never like that simple. But the first reckoning was Abramovich, and it was a bit like, okay, is anything? And like the Premier League's position was free market, baby, who cares? And that's kind of opened the doors for subsequent all manner of other kind of deals and purchases, etc., etc. Then you had like the Neymar transfer as well, which enormously distorted the market, I think, for many years. I think we've probably only just come out of the other side of that, only with like probably COVID and the fact that the Premier League gets so much more income. That's the thing that's kind of distorting the market now. This does feel a bit like another reckoning for me, to be honest. This does feel a little bit like, are we going to just move to a stage now where we are pretty nakedly going to, rob Peter to pay Paul, as it were? And are we just going to say that's okay? Maybe the answer is the horse has already bolted. Maybe the answer is, well, you can't start now. It's too late, having already decided that it's the free market, baby, and all of that. So, they're kind of complicated questions in that respect. But this does feel like another reckoning. And look, I'm kind of tired of predicting that like football's bubble will burst and all of that, because it just never happens. But like at the same time, I don't think football can take this level of interest for granted. I'm not forecasting absolute doom here. I'm not saying like the arse is going to fall out of everything, but like football is competing with a lot, and there have been many times in football's history where it's come face to face with that reckoning. Like Herbert Chapman, all of the stuff that Herbert Chapman did at Arsenal that we're all aware of, like, doing up Highbury and numbers on the back of the shirts and scoreboards and all of that was because he was scared. Like, he was aware of the competition from Speedway, because the motor vehicle was going a lot quicker, and loads of people like, wow, Speedway, I can go and watch a car drive like 90 miles an hour. And he recognized that was a threat to football's popularity. And so all of these innovations, all of these ideas he had, the first thing he wanted to do at Arsenal was make the stadium better, because he was like, we can't take for granted that people are going to come and stand on a heap of mud to watch football. Like, we have to up our game here a little bit. And every time football's come face to face with that reckoning, it's kind of dealt with it very well. Forgive me, I'm having some work done on my bathroom, so there may be some
you're doing
noises
fine
in the background.
Yeah, we'll sort it.
But also, and like really good innovations like banning the tackle from behind and the pass back rule and blah, blah, blah. Like football's got a lot of these things right. I feel like there is another reckoning here. I do feel like, and again, it's my Twitter timeline, which is not like representative of the world at large and all of that. And this morning I put up a tweet about like some hypothetical child traffickers owning a Premier League club. And it turns out lots of people on the internet are very, very angrily defending these child traffickers that I've completely invented.
Yeah.
So
tribalism, baby, never fails.
Yeah, like sports washing is, it's very, very vibrant ground for that. But I don't know. I do detect that there's a little bit of fatigue about this, that a lot of people are just like, and like we're already at a point where the team that's winning the Premier League title every year, everyone's just kind of going, so what? Like no one hates them even. Like the Premier League benefited, I think, from people hating Manchester United, because hatred and rivalry, that all feeds into it. But like, I do think it's a bit dangerous for the Premier League that everyone's looking at like the treble winners. I haven't seen anyone talk about like when United did that in '99. Like, God, I've read about it for 10 years. Like, it just, I mean, things don't endure as much anyway nowadays because we're so bombarded with information. But like, it's kind of apathy, and I think the Premier League recognises that it's dangerous. And honestly, cynically, I do think that's a little part of why some of these charges have come out, because it almost feels intellectual property kind of thing. It's almost like we're marketing this league based on its competitiveness, and you're taking a bit of a sledgehammer to that at the moment. So, this does feel a little bit of a watershed moment for me, actually, where there, you can debate the extent of the relationships and all of that, but it does feel a little bit like, is this the new thing that we're going to let happen?
Yeah, and I think we're into almost like a Donald Trump situation, in the sense that when there's so many scandals and so many outrages, it's just hard to stay focused on any of them. And you could point to 5, 6, 7 different things happening in football right now that are outrageous. What FIFA's trying to do with club competitions, what UEFA's trying to do with the Champions League, what City have done with money, 115 charges. That's going to be back page news soon. What Saudi's doing with the money and how it's influencing Premier League football, and what Chelsea are doing. Like the Clear Lake and PIF relationship, there's too much scandal. Oh, by the way, the Saudi ownership of Newcastle, while their money is flowing into Chelsea, while they also own clubs in Saudi Arabia. I mean, I'm going to promise you this. If Newcastle have a player they need to sell that's a weight around their shoulders, is anybody going to be able to look at a transfer to, like, if Newcastle sell a distressed asset for big money to Al Hilal or whatever, how's anybody going to evaluate that? How's there any credibility to that move? Right? It's really becoming difficult to get your hands around one crisis, scandal, issue, get everyone to focus on it and discuss it. Because the whataboutism too just flows. The number of times that people can say, oh, well, you're billionaire owner, you think their hands are clean, or you think it's not the point. You got to be able to focus on one topic. And right now, that whataboutism and that morass of challenges makes it difficult to focus on any one of them. And in a moment, I'll tell you my thought of what the end game of all this is. But Clive, why don't you come back in?
Yeah, I just, we haven't mentioned what's happening at Manchester United, right? So the biggest club in our country, but it's almost like this is a litmus test. You got a guy that's born in Manchester trying to buy the club. They're not interested in him potentially. They're interested in the highest bidder. So you're now bringing the Qataris into this, and the whole Qatari link with PSG. I mean, my brain can barely deal with it all, right? So what could that mean for the league? If an institution like Manchester United disappears that direction, what does that mean for football? What does that mean? There isn't too many Jude Bellinghams that have some sort of moral compass that says, I want to go to a historic club rather than go to a non-organically generated club. He ended up at Real Madrid. Other players are not going to be like that, right? No one's going to make that stand. And so I do think we've not even touched the surface of where this game could go. And I take Tim's point around apathy, particularly around Man City. He's spot on there. But on the other side of things, maybe it's just me. I'm seeing more and more and more and more interaction around these subjects. Maybe because of how I'm exposed to it on social media, which I wouldn't have done a few years ago. And the interest around the Premier League and the hits and the data hits, I bet there's never been bigger. No other league can get near to what's happening here. And data and interest drives revenue, advertising. I don't see it slowing. In fact, there's opportunities to grow again, to go again. Champions League, we're going to expand to 5 clubs. There's going to be some big clubs in there. There's going to be some big clubs not in there. I mean, I can't see it slowing. The only worry when it comes down to the players and the amount of players and the amount of games they have. That's the one thing that does concern me, the schedule. Because without the players, you have no product. And I think when we start to see that go wrong, I think we will become apathetic if the product isn't right. But at the moment, we are invested, and every single Saturday is a World Cup semi-final for all of us.
Yeah. So a few things. First of all, obviously Saudi Arabia has the right to have a football league, and they have the right to have a football league that spends as much money as it wants. I mean, the Premier League outspends Europe. Europe outspends, other parts of the world. Financial disparity is part of life. And, there are people that would say, well, you've got a billionaire owner. What are you complaining about? I think we should at least point out that state money is different, that when it is the resources of a nation that, oh, by the way, probably should belong to the people, that are being repurposed for sport without the democratic choice of the people to do that it is different. Without moralizing about it too much, I just think we have to draw a line in, I was going to say a line in the sand. Let's draw a line under the moralizing about where the resources come from. You cannot always do the what about thing. Whether you think, for example, a Stan Kroenke got his money the right way or the wrong way, billionaires shouldn't exist, different debate. It's not the national wealth of a nation. It is not state money furthering state aims. And that complicates it, and I think changes the conversation. But I think what's more important from a footballing standpoint, because those are larger conversations that I'll admit I'm not particularly qualified to have. Frankly, I'm not an expert on geopolitics and soft power, or really on anything if I think about it. But you know what, Tim? I'm looking at the end game. I don't think the end game is a vibrant Saudi league. Absolutely no way. I do not think that's the end game. I think the end game is the Live Golf PGA model. Get in there, throw so much money at it that it disrupts, and then get a seat at the table for what comes next. That's what they did with Live Golf. They built this Live Golf thing. They did it quick and fast and dirty and with a lot of money. They stole some big name talent. They got the attention of the PGA Tour. They created the appearance of an extinction level event, right? Like an existential threat. And then they got their seat at the table, and now they own a piece of golf, period. And the Live Golf Tour is no more. I think, in a way, if you ask Todd Bowley and Stan Kroenke and FSG, are they happy with what's happening in Saudi Arabia? Secretly, they tell you it's the best thing that ever happened to football, and here's why. Because when the next Super League conversation comes around, the fans will say, well, they don't have a choice. They're protecting football from what the Saudis are doing. And then the Saudi League will come in and say, we want one of our teams in your Super League. And the Super League will say, yep, you can have a team or you can have 2 teams. And Al Hilal will be in the, or Al Ittihad will be in the Super League. There'll be a Super League. And the fans who had the energy to argue against it before, having been beaten down by what happened at Newcastle and what's happening at United and what happened at City and what happened at Chelsea and what's happening with the Saudi League, the fans won't have the energy to fight it this time, because the fans will see it as the league trying to defend what little ground it has left against what the Saudi money is doing, because they'll start pulling away talent. We're already seeing it. Ruben Neves is not exactly past his prime. He's $55 million off to Saudi Arabia. If Thomas Partey goes to Saudi Arabia, he could still play in the Premier League. There are players going that still have good football in them at the top level. Now, I am going to say this. I will never blame a player for taking the money. It's their career. It's their labor. They can sell their labor for what they want to sell their labor for. It's incumbent upon the people making the rules, setting the rules, creating the regulatory framework. They have the responsibility. Don't put the responsibility on the players. The players are the labor. Put the responsibility on the people creating the framework. And I'll wrap up this screed, this monologue, and I apologize, soliloquy, sorry, Tim, by saying, if Saudi Arabia pulls enough talent away and poses enough threat and starts to create the sense that there's a destabilizing impact, that the UEFA Champions League, because they're not in the Champions League, right? They can't be in that. So now maybe they start a international thing with other clubs. They disrupt, and then they ask for their seat at the table. And suddenly they say, well, we need a Super League, because what can we do? They're paying £100 million a year wages. They're paying €200 million transfer fees. The money is decoupled from what we can earn. The losses are widening. The small clubs can't keep up. Oh, the poor small clubs, think of them. If we keep going like this, they'll be put out of business. The only way to keep them in business is we break off and we start a Super League with some financial regulations. And we'll let Al Hilal and Al Ittihad come into that league. And the fans will see it as defending football instead of ruining it, because they'll have been beaten down by this change. Now, I've just said a lot of stuff that could be 180 degrees from where this is all going. It just seems like it, especially seeing what just happened in Live Golf. So you want to maybe come back in and get my feet back on the ground and my head out of the clouds here a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's an end game of some sort, isn't there? And Clive's already typed it into the chat, but I think I know where the 2030 World Cup's going to be. And, you know, and look, let's face it, pretty much every World Cup and Olympics is hosted by a country for some kind of sports washing reason, because they're pretty expensive to hold. And countries only do that really for one reason. Like in the UK, we had the Olympics over in London in 2012. I still hear people saying, oh, what a wonderful time in our timeline that was. Like, it works. It makes people feel good. It makes people feel, better about the time that they lived in. And, 2012 in the UK wasn't like it wasn't, it's added like a bit of a rose tint, let's put it that way. But yeah, like, there's an end game of some sort, and you're right, really the only comparator we have at the moment is golf. Now, obviously golf may be slightly different, not quite as lucrative a sport, but the model's there, and like you say, there is an end game of some sort. They're not doing this for no reason, throwing this level of money around, and it could be very much a kind of, the frog in the pot, the frog in the boiling water analogy, and all of that. And it is kind of fascinating to see what that is and what that's going to be. But one of the interesting things is, I believe PIF have bought 4 clubs in Saudi Arabia, because one of the things they worked out is, we can't just give one club all the money, because then you haven't got a competitive league. So if we spread it around 4 clubs, then we've got 4 very well, and what is that if not like the Premier League model? Because what the Premier League has got is 5 or 6 really rich clubs, whereas Germany have got, obviously we're talking relatively, Germany have got 1, and France have got 1, and Italy have kind of got none anymore. So they're kind of copying the Premier League model a little bit, where they've worked out, let's have like 4 really wealthy clubs here, and PIF has some links to Premier League clubs and all of that. And I remember reading that Todd Bowl is really interested in the multi-club idea. That's one of the things, because he's a disruptor, right? I think we can say that fairly comfortably. That's kind of what he's seeking to do in football, and what he's done in other industries. I believe did he do it in the tech industry? Like, just kind of came in as a bit of a disruptor. And so, if you're talking multi-club ownership, maybe that's where this is going. Maybe Chelsea take a little slice of one of those clubs. Maybe Newcastle take a little slice of one of those clubs, and maybe you get a more kind of fruitful relationship of player exchange and all of that. And again, kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. And then at the same time, it's the kind of, well, maybe if some of your players, expensive players, haven't quite come up to the mark, we'll take them over here, because players like Edouard Mendy, like, what a signing that is for the Saudi Pro League. That's an amazing signing for them, just because it hasn't worked at Chelsea. So it's a virtuous relationship, isn't it? And at the moment, it seems like, it might not be like an actual partnership, because, buying Ruben Neves, Wolves are another club who are sailing very close to the water on FFP, and it might not be like a bailout. It might just be this club a week, like this club, like, we're looking for players, And these are the clubs who really need money, and they really need them on this set of accounts. So going for someone like Ruben Neves probably makes a lot of sense, because it's like Wolves can't really spend any money this summer unless they make a big sale. That makes them vulnerable to a big sale. And if you're the Saudi Pro League and you're one of those clubs, you go, okay, Ruben Neves, what a signing that is for this league. Let's get him in. And Wolves will say yes to that. And of course, then there are agent relationships and all of that. And we know that Wolves have been largely built on the back of an agent relationship, which I think is a very relatively uncontroversial thing to say. So, there's all of these kind of different dynamics going on. But you're right, there has to be an end game.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like at the moment they're investing in like infrastructure or academies, or even China. Initially, China had the stated aim of building a team to try and win the World Cup in 25 years or so. And they started like putting caps on overseas players because they kind of wanted to develop domestic talent. It's not clear whether maybe Saudi Arabia will come to that. At the moment, it looks much more like they're going on the model of like relatively aging superstars, albeit, Ziyech, Mendy, like those aren't aging superstars. Those are players who could easily play for other Premier League or big European clubs like Champions League clubs. So yeah, there's an end game. We don't quite know what it is yet. And you're right, golf's the only real parallel we've got at the moment.
Yeah, and that wound up being not about building something long-term for Live Golf, but getting a seat at the table and disrupting. And I mean, as a final thought on this, Clive, the real concern right now in the short term is not the end game, and it's not our job to figure out the machinations of nations and billionaires. I mean, it's our job to live downstream of their decisions, though. Right now, markets are a thing, people, and this distorts the market in a major, major way. Can we sell Nico Pepe all of a sudden? A player we probably would have had to pay to leave. Is there a way to sell him now? If you can get 55 million for Thomas Partey, this distorts it. But if you look at what happened at Barca, do either of you guys remember, was it this summer they sold Neymar that they paid 120 million for Coutinho? Is that what happened? Yep. Is that how they reinvested that money?
Yep.
Right? I mean, big money in changes how much money goes out. How do teams start to determine transfer values, appropriate wages? And what will owners be willing to do going head to head with what these nation states are doing? It's gonna distort the market. I can't pretend to see far enough down the road to see what it does. But this summer, Clive, it's an orgy of money, and I think, frankly, as distasteful as it may sound to say this, you gotta get fed at the trough. You know what I mean? You got to move your players there if you need to unload them. I don't know what else you do.
Yeah, I think if you look at sport as a whole in that region, Saudi region, Qatar, Dubai, all that region, they're looking at leisure as the next frontier, aren't they, for when the oil is no longer there. So they want to be close to the sporting world. Sporting world, particularly football, there is no other reach like it anywhere in the world. Football has its global audience, so you can really sell yourself as a football nation. I did hear something that the Saudi League is the 58th strongest league in the world. That could change real quickly with money and investment.
Probably already has, yeah.
That could change really quickly. So I think that's part of it. And obviously the World Cup is a nice big show to show what we can do, how we can run the sport. I think what it will do, similar to golf, when Live Golf came in, they looked at these tired PGA players and said, we can pay you more for playing less. When that becomes an issue, when players say, you know what, I'm not going to do what Smith Rowe did, running around with his groin in pieces. I'm not going to do that. And how many things that we don't know about, I'm going to take the money and look after my body for the rest of my life, look after my family and my family's family. Not every player comes from the Shires that lands in England, right? So we can't be sitting here as three middle-aged blokes talk about these players' motivations when they come from places like where Caicedo comes from, for example.
Exactly. Yep. Well said.
And so it's all open, it's all on the table, and it's up to our league to not sit there doing laps of honour, but make sure that we're looking at every option to make sure that we're the number one league in the world. And if UEFA care very much about their competition, they've got to think about that carefully as well. How this links to FIFA, how it links to the global game. There needs to be a level of sitting in a room and working this out. And sometimes competing leagues make you do that, and that's what's happened in golf. Liv was dying. Liv was being gobbled up. But there's now a one regime. Everyone's in the room and there's money in the room, and I guarantee the prize money will go up and the schedule will get slightly less and the players will get more things they were complaining about. Could that happen in football? Not yet. But another player creates competition, and competition creates improved performance, right? So let's see what happens. I very much agree with your point, Elliot, about I don't think people are crying over this at this moment in time. But Tim typed something in the chat then, and I think that's very, very important. The question is, does everyone get access to this market? And that's the key. If only certain clubs get access to this market or favourable access, only certain clubs have relationships with each other because of their relationships, then you have a them and us, then you have a distortion, then you have people getting free money that other people not getting. And we've suffered that already with Chelsea, who took our place in London, took our place in the English game, kicked us out of first and second and won all the trophies. So it's up to us to, as a club and as a league, to work out what's right and proper here, shall we say.
Yeah. The worry for me is the fatigue, the outrage fatigue, the scandal fatigue, the existential crisis fatigue that sets in. I think football fans, and let's not just say football fans, let's say English football fans deserve a lot of credit for the way they reacted to the Super League announcement. I think it was a bit of a trial balloon, but there was money spent on that trial balloon, and English fans really reacted to it powerfully and vocally and visibly. Can that energy be found again in the face of all of the subsequent scandals and all of the money crises? And if you look at a real existential economic crisis facing football, where now it doesn't look like greedy owners, it looks like owners reacting to the crisis being put to them. We saw the head of the PGA Tour make some incendiary comments about Live Golf and the Saudi regime, then go have secret meetings with them and sign up to partner with them. It is not hard for people to do a heel turn when there's a lot of money on the table. It'll be very, very interesting to see how it plays out. I hope you don't mind these conversations, by the way. I know they're not as fun as who are we linked with? But, there'll be time for that too. We got all the scouting videos up over on Patreon. I think we're going to do, some people have recommended this and I really want to do this. So Clive, this will be the first you're hearing this. We'll do some scouting videos of our own players. Because I think it is a good check on how the scouting videos come out. I think that'll be a lot of fun as well. We'll have another deep dive on a player this week over on Patreon, and we'll just keep up to date with the news and keep up to date with the ever-changing landscape of football. And more than anything, just love that you're here. Hope to see some of you during the U.S. tour, which is inching closer. And we go again, as they say. Clive's on Twitter, ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Tim's on Twitter, Stillmanator. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Hang in there, everyone. Long summer. Lots to happen. We love you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10 transfer window new.